Before dawn on May 29, 1453, the air above Constantinople trembled, not from prayer, but from iron. For weeks, the earth itself had been shuddering. Now, in the gray before sunrise, Sultan Mehmed II watched the battered silhouette of the Theodosian walls and prepared to end a 1,000-year empire. The beginning had come the year before. In 1452, a Hungarian engineer named Orban arrived in Constantinople carrying designs for a weapon no city had yet faced. He brought his plans to Emperor Constantine XI, the last Byzantine ruler. He claimed he could build a cannon large enough to shatter even the legendary triple walls that had repelled Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, and Crusaders. Constantine listened, but his empire was a city with fading hinterlands and an empty treasury. Orban needed gold, metal, powder, and time. Commodities Byzantium no longer possessed. The Theodosian walls had stood for centuries. Investing everything in an untested monster of bronze was a gamble Constantine could not afford. He refused. Orban walked away. He traveled north to Edirne, capital of the rising Ottoman Empire, and stood before 19-year-old Sultan Mehmed II. Mehmed had already resolved to take Constantinople. The city split his domains in Europe and Asia. It was both strategic prize and symbolic conquest. Where Constantine lacked coin, Mehmed had revenue from expanding territories and a disciplined administrative machine. Mehmed not only funded the project, he expanded it. In foundries at Edirne, Orban and Ottoman metallurgists cast enormous bronze bombards. The largest, later called the Basilica, stretched roughly 27 feet. It required teams of oxen and hundreds of men to transport, and fired stone balls weighing over 600 kilograms. When it was test-fired, the report was said to be heard for miles. While the cannon were forged, Mehmed tightened the noose. He ordered the construction of Rumeli Hizara, a massive fortress on the European side of the Bosporus, directly across from an earlier Ottoman stronghold. Completed in months, its guns controlled maritime traffic. Venetian ships that refused inspection were sunk. Constantinople was being isolated long before the first siege trench was dug. Inside the city, Constantine prepared with what he had. Perhaps 7,000 to 8,000 defenders, Byzantines, Genoese, Venetians, and volunteers, would face an Ottoman force that modern estimates place between 60,000 and 80,000. Among the defenders was Giovanni Giustiniani, a seasoned Genoese commander who took charge of the land walls. The Theodosian walls, with their outer moat, outer wall, and towering inner wall, still inspired confidence. They had never been taken by direct assault. On April 6, 1453, Mehmed's army encircled the city. His fleet sealed the Sea of Marmara. At the Golden Horn, the Byzantines stretched a great iron chain across the harbor entrance, blocking Ottoman ships from entering and preventing a full naval encirclement. It was a familiar defensive measure used successfully before. Then the bombardment began. The great cannon were slow. Some could fire only a few times a day, but each shot struck with unprecedented force. Stone balls smashed into the outer wall, shaking masonry loose. Repairs were made nightly by defenders hauling rubble and timber under torchlight. The walls were strong, but they were not designed for sustained artillery. Mehmed adapted quickly. When his fleet was denied entry to the Golden Horn, he ordered one of the most audacious maneuvers of the siege. Ships were hauled over greased logs across the hills of Galata and lowered into the harbor behind the chain. By April 22nd, Ottoman vessels floated inside the Golden Horn. The defenders were stunned. The city was now threatened from both land and harbor. Day after day, the bombardment widened breaches near the gate of St. Romanus. Ottoman sappers tunneled toward the walls. Byzantine counterminers dug to intercept them in underground clashes lit by torch and smoke. Skirmishes flared along the ramparts. Food grew scarce. Appeals to Western Europe brought little beyond a handful of ships and men. Religious divisions between Orthodox and Catholic Christians lingered, even as Ottoman banners gathered outside. On May 29th, Mehmed launched his final assault. Before dawn, waves of attackers advanced. First came irregular troops, tasked with exhausting defenders. Then, Anatolian soldiers pressed the breaches. Finally, the elite Janissaries moved forward in disciplined ranks. At the critical sector near the gate of St. Romanus, Giustiniani was struck. Accounts differ whether by shot or crossbow bolt. Severely wounded, he was carried from the walls. His withdrawal spread alarm among the defenders who relied on his leadership. Morale faltered. Some sources mention a small postern gate, the Porta, left unsecured amid the chaos, though historians debated significance. What is certain is that Ottoman troops gained a foothold atop the inner wall. Once a few standards were planted, the psychological barrier broke. The defenders, outnumbered and exhausted, began to collapse inward. Emperor Constantine XI removed his imperial insignia and joined the fighting. He was last seen near the breach, sword in hand. His body was never conclusively identified. By mid-morning, Ottoman banners flew from the towers. Mehmed II entered the city later that day. At Hagia Sophia, the great cathedral that had stood since the 6th century, he ordered it converted into a mosque. Constantinople became Istanbul, capital of a transformed empire. The walls had not failed in a single instant. They had failed under weeks of artillery innovation, logistical preparation, numerical superiority, strategic ingenuity, and the erosion of morale at a decisive moment. The engineers' rejected plans had found their patron. Bronze and gunpowder had rewritten the balance between stone and siege. For nearly a millennium, Constantinople had been the shield of Europe and heir of Rome. On that May morning in 1453, beneath smoke and shattered masonry, its long defense ended not with fire alone, but with the echo of a new age announcing itself in thunder.